Fiance of 11 years cheated. Important announcement. Before we begin, this channel has been demonetized some time ago. But I've created a backup channel, link will be in the description. If you liked my content, I can guarantee you daily updates on my new channel. I also have channel with entitled People and Karen Stories. Link also will be in the description, I highly recommend checking it out. Without further ado, enjoy the video. My fiance of 11 years cheated on me in a threesome with her best friend and best friend's boyfriend while visiting her out of state for a weekend. We've been struggling prior as we had a house fire and spent time in her mother's basement during the rebuild, which took almost 3 years and an insane amount of stress. We were not able to be intimate a lot as we lived in about 500 square feet with our 2 children. The stress got to both of us and I was far from the best spouse. We started resenting each other. I gave up on the house build because she employed her brother to do it, and that just ended up with him stealing money and lying about progress on the house. Anytime I would complain or try and get involved, I was to her just attacking her family. This led me to drinking a lot and just giving up on all hope of ever returning to a normal life. She wanted to separate, and that's when I realized all that I could lose. I nutted up and fixed the damn house myself. 5 months of 14-hour days and dealing with the code inspector, we finally moved in and felt like we were back on track. She did seem hesitant about rebuilding our relationship. One day we would talk of having another kid and the next I'd get cold-shouldered for no reason. After the talk of separating 5 months ago, we both agreed to work it out. It was a week after this she went to Florida and the threesome occurred. I just found out about it and I am just a wreck. We have everything in our life built together, from shared bank accounts to kids. When she told me, she said it like it was the biggest weight off her shoulders. We haven't spoken much since. I plan on leaving, but that ends we meet at my mother's as all I have is put into this house which is in her name. Terrified to leave my kids in this life behind. My kids, who were 2 and 4 at the time of the fire, got screwed from having bedrooms or a place to play, now have bedrooms and a family room. I'm not trying to find excuses for her, but we were both very mentally messed up at the time. Along with the house fire, her dad had passed. We lost our family dog. Oh, and the damn pandemic, which I got laid off with. I cannot begin to explain the levels of stress and fear. In that environment, we had no way to allow any romance to occur. Do I try and reconcile this relationship? Has anyone ever successfully recovered from this? I'm not a share you feelings or look for advice guy. This is a very lonely pain. Reaching out here so I stay anonymous. Story 2, STBXW showed up at my apartment last evening. It's me again, Reddit. I am unfortunately using this spot to vent log diary this process in my divorce recovery of my sense of pride and self-worth. It has been cathartic and emotionally cleansing of a sort, even the derisive and incredibly unkind people and their comments and conjecture. For that I thank you. My STBXW showed up last evening about 18 hours ago. I had been home for about 20 minutes and had performed my usual decontaminating ritual from my shift yesterday. She knows me so well, no sooner had I put on my comfy sweats and favorite ratty shirt does there come a somewhat frantic knock at my apartment door. I wasn't expecting a visitor, so I kind of thought it might have been a maintenance person. They usually change the furnace air handler filters in the 3rd week of the month here. Like an idiot, and usually thinking only the best in my fellow humans, I opened the door without looking through the peephole, and there she stood. Solemn-faced and almost indignant. I felt many things at once. A bit of fear, some anger, and truthfully some longing. My first thought was that something very bad had happened. Before I could say my prepared statement in regards to her intruding into my life, it is unfortunate that you made the decisions you made and actions you took. However, I choose to not make myself available to you anymore, and all communication should be made through my attorney that you will pay for at her rate. Goodbye. She abruptly handed me a sealed brown envelope, turned around and slowly walked away. I threw it against the wall opposite my apartment front door and shut it briskly, making sure to overly turn the deadbolt so that the click of it could be heard outside. 15 minutes later I opened my door again and she wasn't in the breezeway, but she had obviously leaned the large envelope against my front door. She had written "I'm sorry" on it. For a moment, I thought it was my proposed separation divorce settlement and she had signed it and we then just had to wait until a judge ruled on it. No. It was a letter, and the packet included a timeline of events from our initial dating through my discovery of her infidelity. In actuality, there were 2 other affairs. In truth, several Redditors had stated that her behavior inclined her to be a serial cheater. I kind of figured there were others as well. The realist pessimist in me actually thought there might have been many others. She confirmed the on-off guy prior to us being exclusive. Keep in mind she introduced me to her daughters and we were sure as it acting like we were in a relationship before we named it. Then there was an ER doctor when I was in orientation out of town for 2 weeks at a time over 8 months to get exposure for my certification and training about 10 years ago in our relationship marriage. Then about 5 years ago, 12 years into our relationship marriage, a girlfriend and her boyfriend Threesome while I was on an overnight call case. Not going to lie, it stung. But didn't really hurt like the initial discovery. Even the gory details she included in this timeline were actually kind of soothing, like I was just confirming my already correct assumptions. The letter was interesting. In it she detailed her shortcomings and failings within herself and how my actions after the discovery of her current affair have made the pain of what she inflicted on me real and very difficult to live with. She also wrote she has been attending aggressive therapy and seeking to better herself, and that this was part of her therapy. She closed with her wishing and wanting to remain married. I wanted to show it to my FWB the next time she came over and mock her vulnerability the way she did to me. But she's too classy for that. It was a fleeting feeling and a little flash of the rage monster in me, but he's too burnt out and weary now, plus, I am better than that. I knew she would be in the back parking lot watching my tiny patio. I've seen her Porsche there from time to time. I opened the curtain. It's a S80 medical residency apartment, so it's got those plastic strips covering the sliding glass door. And saw her car. I waved to her and made a come on motion. I sat her down across from me at my little 3-foot table in my uncomfortable dining chairs and said she had this evening night, it was about 9 p.m. at that point, to get out whatever she had felt she needed to say. I made sure to reinforce boundaries and reiterate the fact that there was absolutely nothing she could say that would undo the divorce and my moving on from our marriage. She was definitely taken aback, but after an awkward minute she began by apologizing for her decisions and mistakes as much as I wanted to jump down her throat about mistakes. Inadvertently cutting someone off in traffic is a mistake. Choosing to betray someone, that's a willful decision of moral failing. She basically poured her heart out for a solid 90 minutes. She included her poor reasons and rationale as well as her fears and insecurities. Basically her why and how she justified it all. Some of it was rehearsed and some of it was pretty heartfelt. I thanked her and told her that it was late and she should leave. She began crying. Not sobbing, but tears were streaming. A few months ago I would have mocked her and said hurtful things. But I again thanked her for her honesty and told her how I wished she would have been this open with me 2 years ago. I too began crying, not sobbing, just a few drops. She made that super awkward shuffle step slide to hug me, but I kind of turned sideways for a more friendly pat on the back and a there. I knew that as soon as I had said it, it crushed her. She began ugly crying. I guided her onto my couch and told her to take a minute and collect herself, while I got a box of tissues. I didn't want her driving in Houston traffic on a Saturday night hysterical. I guess me saying that made it worse, and before I knew it, she was having a full-on hyperventilation panic attack. Legit. Her hands' fingers were cramping, her pupils were the size of dinner plates, she was terrified. I offered to take her to the hospital and she adamantly refused. She took a medicine bottle from her small purse and asked for a glass of water. She had been prescribed Xanax. She took 2 milligrams and asked if it would be okay if she waited until things got better. I said sure. I did promise her that she had the evening to get it out of her system. I told her to take her shoes off and gave her a blanket to lay down on the couch. I cleaned up my kitchen and made a grocery list for tomorrow. I only like going to the grocery store early in the morning, especially HEB on a Sunday. By then it was about midnight and she was lightly snoring. I stood there watching her for a few minutes, then turned off the living room light and left the hallway light on as a night light so she could make it to the bathroom. Left a note to please lock the bottom handle lock on her way out and be safe. I had laid down with a contented sense of peace and almost gentleness in my mind. I tossed and turned until about 2, then got up to check on her. She was definitely deeply asleep. I then did something I am remorseful for. I opened up her phone. I saw her dating apps. Puff, Bumble, Tinder. I kind of grimaced and sort of chuckled. She was engaging in the usual lascivious s-sing, and it was obvious she had been with some much younger men. It looked like 2, maybe 3. It was hard to tell between what was texting and s-sing. It was evident she was just a pump and dump though from the abrupt radio silence. I pulled up her Skype log. I knew I'd see Needle DCK on there. Yep. Just 4 days ago. I put her phone back and went back to my bedroom. I left a message with his betrayed wife in the guise of checking on her and updating her on my divorce situation. She had told me when I dropped the news bombshell on her about her husband and my wife, that she didn't want to hear from me again. About 10 minutes after I sent that, I just went ahead and sent a message telling her that he was still communicating with my STBXW just in case they were reconciling. All I could think about was the fable about the turtle and the scorpion. I awoke to too much light in the eastern sky and a smell of good coffee and kolaches. She had turned my phone alarm off. I stopped locking my phone. It's just essentially me and my little apartment life, and gone to the grocery store and then gotten breakfast. I was not pleased. I guess she had packed an overnight bag just in case. And had fresh clothes as well. She was waiting for me in my little kitchen and tried to kiss me to tell me good morning and how she was such a lucky woman to have such a loving, kind man in her life. I threw the kolaches in the trash, which is a sin. They were my favorite, honey poppy seed, and told her in a clenched jaw with a menacing growl to get out now. I realized I was angry at her hypocrisy, that I really shouldn't have known about. Again, it's my fault for looking on her phone, but there was a microscopic part of me that wanted to believe she truly had overcome something within herself and that I was only going to find Pinterest and Facebook. What that microscopic part of me would have done with that knowledge, I don't know. Of course I realized what I had done immediately, and at this point she started crying all over again. I know. You will all be saying what an idiot I am for even entertaining her little confession last night. I am just a kind person, and I understand how important some steps are in therapy, especially now. So I told her that she did a good thing by confessing her issues and mistakes and telling me her breakthrough, etc., but I did not feel that she had changed herself fundamentally. With that, she wanted to know what I meant and how could she show me proof. I just chuckled to myself, and all I could think was, dude, if you have to ask, you'll never know. I again told her I was proud of her for her confession and she needed to get her things and make her way to her house. I had gotten my phone and turned on the voice recorder after she started crying. She saw me turn it on and wanted to know if I wanted to get her consent to duck, and she would really love it if we could do some of the things we used to do. I declined. She then wanted to know when FWB was coming over. Again, I declined to answer. I made a quick show of gathering her shoes and purse along with her overnight bag and handing them to her. Once she was past the door, I threw the deadbolt and sat on the ground leaning against the door. My heart was hammering. All kinds of what ifs popped into my head. What if she accused me of RP or assault or whatever? Fuck, what if she copied my key? I did nothing wrong, other than show another human a little kindness and humanity. Sure, I snooped on her phone, but technically it is still my phone as my name is on the bill. That's in the works to get divided among other brass tacks. I left a message on the apartment manager's non-emergency service and told her that I would like a new lock and key set. If they wanted a reason, I'd tell them. But I have no problem just paying for it outright. To all of you that have been saying I'm some kind of hero or inspiration from all of this, stop, I'm a complete duck up. I am now at that stage where I am angry and disappointed in myself again for letting her into my heart for just a second. I do, however, feel that this wasn't exactly planned on her part. I feel like she thinks we are going to be together and that she can fix this mess, despite me telling her repeatedly that it's over. I just have to stop and be the mountain of granite. Give her absolutely nothing. Alright, I am ready for my written tongue lashing and hellfire with brimstone condemnation. I deserve it this time. Edit to add, if I see her car outside again, I am going to start the process of getting a restraining order. I don't feel like my life or safety are in jeopardy. She could just make life difficult, and I ain't about that kind of life. Edit to add part 2. I called the apartment security. The dude looked like Barney Fife. I told him the situation. Estranged wife. Soon to be divorced. She doesn't have a unit here. The usual. I filled out their incident report and that's about all I can do. There is a control access gate, but it closes so slow you can piggyback with another vehicle going in. I told them they should post there during peak times. Story 3, my story of my wife's infidelity. My wife and I were high school sweethearts who married right after graduation and before my military enlistment. We've now been married over 24 years. Recent revelations have turned my world upside down. Before I start, I want to explain that my wife suffered serious sexual abuse for 2 years as a child and suffers from severe borderline personality disorder which was only recently diagnosed. Had we known about her mental health issues, we could have avoided what happened because we would have known what red flags to look for. This does not excuse her actions, she is still responsible for her decisions. 4 years after we got married, she had an affair with my best friend from the military. It was hard to accept and took me years to get over it, but I forgave them both. He disappeared for a few years while her and I spent a lot of time talking things out. When he came back he was married, and we had a lot of talks and things returned to normal. He was like my brother and I loved them both. A few years later, my wife confessed that she had bisexuality tendencies but never explored them. It was an interesting conversation, but she never indicated it was anything more than a conversation. A year or so later, she went to a party with some coworkers and after some drinks, started messing around with her female coworker. She said it was awkward and uncomfortable and they didn't get very far. She confessed to me that same week, and while I was not happy, I dismissed it because I wasn't threatened by it. Not long after this, she started hanging out with an old friend from high school that I wasn't comfortable with. Our kids would hang out and watch movies at his place and I went over there a few times when I wasn't working. Then she started hanging out there later and one day, she came home at 6:30 a.m. and I was furious. She said I was overreacting and that they didn't do anything. She said they were just cuddling on the couch and watching a movie. I lost it and a few days later after I had time to calm down, I told her I didn't want her to see him again. She never went back but gave me a hard time about telling her who she could be friends with. 3 years later, we were having a conversation about her failed lesbian experiment when she confessed that she had time with my best friend's wife a few months earlier. I was upset and asked if my friend knew about it and she said no. While drinking, again, she said they were messing around and had time. Again, I wasn't threatened by her messing around with another woman, and she said she was no longer having bisexuality tendencies. I was angry about doing it behind my back, not talking to me about her feelings and then waiting so long to tell me. This was in 2009. From 2009 to 2014, we faced a ton of hardships. 2012 was our worst year. My biggest problem came from a mostly timeless marriage since our second daughter was born. By timeless, I'm referring to 1 to 3 times a month if anything at all. I was romantic to her, giving her roses, buying her chocolate, making her dinner, taking her out and watching TV together on the couch. We didn't have a lot of money, so we made do. She just never appeared interested. I re-injured my back due to a military-related injury that made it hard for me to be as active as I'd like. I could lash out on days where my pain was the worst, and could be miserable to be around. I was never violent. But I did my best to make up for it on the good days. I'm still waiting even today, 14 years later, to get the corrective surgery I need from the Virginia. On top of that, I was working full-time, was a full-time student and trying to get my business off the ground. I had a full plate on top of my back injury, but I made it a point of making time for her. She was suffering depression from the birth of our last daughter, and she would shut me out when I tried to talk to her. It started a lot of arguments and fights. She worked part-time and was mostly responsible for caring for the house. Unfortunately, the house was always filthy and any conversation about it always resulted in an argument and her telling me that I needed to help more. So she started hanging out with some of the other soccer moms to vent her frustration, and I let it go because I didn't want her to stay stressed out. I was already working over 60+ hour weeks, attending school for 33+ hours a week, and in daily pain. I didn't want her to feel like me and wanted her to just try to enjoy herself and have a good time. From 2014 to Sep 2021, everything was fine. I graduated with my degree, my business was picking up. I was working less hours. We moved out of the city and into a rural community over an hour north. It was still a timeless marriage, but we were enjoying each other's company a lot better. My back still hurts and we occasionally have an argument, but nothing too serious. I was proud of our relationship, we were strong and all was good. We even just bought a house this year. That was up until September 7th. I had always suspected she slept with her friend and she had always denied and even gave me a hard time about accusing her. It was just a feeling and I never had proof, but I believed it was true. My wife went on a weekend trip with my daughters and I had to stay home to work. While they were gone, I had a serious nightmare about my suspicions and woke up in a sweat. The incident had occurred almost 15 years ago, but I still think of it occasionally, like a feeling of leaving your oven on after leaving your house. It just eats away at you. When she came home, I asked her about it. I was surprised when she finally admitted it, but was more surprised when she admitted to several more affairs, including a man she fell in love with in 2012. I was devastated. Crushed. She told me that she never messed around with her friend until after I accused her of sleeping with him. She said that she went to his place and they were drinking and he made a move and she didn't stop him. She said she hated it and it made her feel disgusted. But the next weekend, she went out with him and some of her friends and he started getting possessive of her. His friends saw it and she was embarrassed. On the way home, she told him she didn't belong to him and that she loved me. She planned to stop hanging out with him. When she got home, this was when I said she couldn't see him anymore, and even thought she made that decision on her own. She gave me an attitude about it. The next affair she had was from Jan to February 2012. She had time with my daughter's soccer coach who I knew from the games. He became friends with the soccer moms and they would often hang out. One night, he calls her at work and the conversation turns to time and they start going into the dirty details of their time fantasies. He invites her over after work and even though she knew why he wanted her to come over she went anyway. They started drinking and had time. They got together 2 other times after that. In April of 2012, she met a guy at work who started talking to her. They started dating for a few months and were having time in his car because he currently lived with his parents. They would have time in random parking lots. I never met this guy, but he met my kids. She fell in love with him and when she found out he was moving to Texas to be with his kids, they discussed her going with him. She realized I would fight her for custody and decided she couldn't go with him. She said after he left, she never had another affair because it was heartbreaking. This was all confessed on D-Day. It was a lot to take in, but she promised there was nothing else. The next day, we continued talking and some thoughts started popping in my head. I was talking to my best friend about what my wife was telling me and he was consoling me. And then I realized that my wife slept with his wife and I didn't know what he knew. I was concerned about ruining his marriage, so I asked my wife about it. I asked if my friend knew about them and she didn't say anything. Warning bells went off in my head, so I asked if he was there. She didn't say anything. My blood started boiling and I asked if it was a threesome and she said yes. She confessed that he called her and said his wife wanted to have a threesome, but she only trusted my wife. Supposedly, my wife asked his wife if it was true and she said yes. They planned it out and met a few weekends later. The threesome started with my wife and my friend rubbing on his wife, but the only 2 people to have intercourse was my wife and my friend. He never had time with his wife who the threesome was supposed to be for. I exploded. We've been seeing a therapist for a few months. I'm hurting. I feel stupid, ashamed, enraged, disrespected. And I feel pathetic for even considering trying to work it out. She's been faithful for the last 9 years, so she says. But it doesn't change the facts of what happened. And yet I'm stuck between craving her touch and being disgusted by it. If it wasn't for the fact that her BPD was a large contributor to her decision making, I would have dropped her. But as I learn more about her disorder, I realized the feelings she was having in our relationship was strongly impacted by mental illness. She would see only the negatives in our relationships, but never remember the positives. It was either all good or all bad. She would be all clingy and loving or hateful and nasty. There was no middle ground there. There is a lot more to the story about D-Day and her confessions, the turmoil and deceptions. But I'll save that for another post. For now, I just need some honest feedback. Thanks. Attention, remember to check out my new channels. Link in the description. Have a nice day. Redditor's reactions. Redditor 1, get tested for STDs immediately. Perform paternity tests on your children. Seek the advice of an attorney. Secure your finances. Leave. Redditor follow-up, all this. I am so disgusted by this story. Please get new friends in addition to the above. Redditor 2, it seems like she is blaming the BPD and is not taking much accountability. If that's the case, BPD is known to be highly untreatable. I honestly find it hard to believe that she has been faithful for the past 9 years. Your wife is a serial cheater. If she has BPD and was able to stay faithful for 9 years, then the BPD is just an excuse for cheating on you multiple times. Your wife seems incredibly untrustworthy and has no concept of loyalty. You deserve better. Answer, she didn't blame BPD at all. She wasn't diagnosed until after we started seeing therapist. The therapist was listening to our story and recognized some of her behaviors as markers for BPD. She started asking questions and after couple of sessions told us about my wife's issues and gave us material to read and understand what BPD was. The books were like reading our biography. And BPD tempers with age. And since we moved away and left many of the toxic friendships she had behind, it helped. Redditor 3, we can't help those who refuse to help themselves. Answer, absolutely. If she had refused to see the therapist, participate in the treatment, be transparent about what happened, etc., and it would be over. She was told to make the choice and she chose to do the work. Redditor 4, good God. I wish I could pull one positive thing about this. All I can come up with is she hasn't given you an STD yet. If you can stay after all this, you're a stronger man than me. I don't know if I could have stayed out of jail by the end of that confession. I wish you luck whatever you decide, but me, hell no.